5, 4, 3, 2.
Hello and welcome to Bird Barrier. My name is Michael Gallion, and today we are covering pest birds on signage. Now, signage signage is a very important part of the world of bird control, and especially in retail settings. There are very specific things that go into branding and the whole storefront, especially when we're talking about famous, top Fortune 500 brands that are national or even international. Like this slide here that you see, this seems pretty straightforward, a cafe, marketplace, storefront there. However, there's a lot that went into why the word cafe is white, why the word marketplace is yellow, why there are wood panels, how deep the channel letters are, where they're placed above the glass, why there's glass, why there's black frame, all of that. Architects, marketing experts, they all get involved in this because it's far more critical than most people that work in bird control will ever realize. And I've learned that over the years. It's just something that's overlooked, not taught, and now I want to share a lot of important information, because by learning this information that we're going to show you today on signage and pest birds, you're going to be able to speak in a way that allows your customer many times, even if it's a maintenance person who's not aware of the marketing elements themselves, or maybe it's the store manager or the owner of the property. Even franchise owners often don't know the connection on how important it is. A lot of national brands have branding guides and requirements that are monitored very carefully, and they inspect the stores every 3 or 4 months. And each franchise owner will get graded on any alterations or any modifications that they think that were needed if they interfere with the brand and the image of the company itself. So this is a really important area of bird control. All right, why signage is important. First of all, the obvious reason why signage is important is to understand what is going on with that business in some brief descriptive way. Even the name of the company, the iconic name, the logos, these all play into it. So let's take a look at this right here. Now, what kind of businesses will be here? When we just look at this business of a new construction of a retail center, without the signs, we don't know what business is going to be there. Now, it's probably very unlikely that there would be some kind of industrial distributor in such a, I'd call it a high-end or high-image aesthetic retail center like this. This is going to appeal more to direct customers. Probably restaurants would be here. There could be national chains like cell phone companies would be in here. But by looking at this structure itself, just in and of itself, there are important considerations to the marketing. Now, one nice thing I will tell you, I say this in a kind of a joking way, but the nice thing about construction like this, this sort of structure, and let's take a look at it again carefully, because what they've done, architects have strategically designed some really nice features to draw birds in here. So from the construction viewpoint, even though we do one particular module where it's for architects to help them understand how design plays into attracting birds, but we see overhead protection, we see these shadowed areas, little recessed areas. Now, the nice thing of this building, by having eaves and the molding that extends outward, droppings that fall off the ledges in general are not going to go against the building. They're going to fall down on the sidewalk areas. So in that way, that's actually a good feature for bird control in terms of that, perching areas. But these, awnings and overhangs that have overhead protection really draw the birds in here. The point of this photo, though, is to understand that marketing is already at play. The image of this building has been designed very carefully. But without the signage, we really don't know what companies, what businesses are open in this building. But let's take a look at a building that is open and operational. And just think about this one question. Looking at this photo, company's called Vandalia Glassworks, right? Do you think they're good at what they do based on what you see here? I mean, there's a lot of consideration that went into this building. There's a modern design to it. They've very carefully chosen their colors. They have a font and a sign describing their company name. In general, by looking at this signage, you get a feeling like, wow, this is a very custom sort of thing. We don't see Glassworks everywhere. This company has put a storefront that's very well designed, and the two go hand in hand. I would have guessed that they do a lot of glass work for architects, possibly. I don't know for sure. I just use this photo as an example to show you that a lot of care went into the storefront. This is no accident. When a company really looks like they're really good at what they do, it's because their attention to details. They're very thorough. They're also very consistent. Whatever you see on the outside of this building, probably what's going on the inside. We probably see an equal level of attention. As a matter of fact, most people put even more effort to the inside, but marketing trends are starting to shift to understand the external, how much it really does play in to the whole big picture. How about this business? Is this business good at what they do based on the outward perception? Believe it or not, my answer to this is yes. They are. They're very good at what they're presenting on the outside, what's going on the inside. Now, me personally, I'm not the kind of guy that would necessarily really want to go there on a regular basis. But I know a lot of friends, and back in the day, I mean, this is a bar. It might be in Chinatown. They've let the front just become a free-for-all of all kinds of weird, activity. But this is this is like a honky-tonk equivalent or some kind of bar. And it would make no sense for them to have this very clean outward image on the outside. And places like this tend to go into urban decay areas and just blend in and sort of become the subcultures of the surrounding area. So it's not always wrong in terms of branded image on the exterior of a storefront, but most people are going to be dealing with more professional places that appeal to everyone. So we see a store, again, this one is a brand new place, hasn't been opened yet, they don't have signage up, but we can just see there's a high level of quality going on here, right? They've, even the bench that we see sitting to the left, that they purchased that bench, they probably have it bolted down, or it's just part of the general area there. They have benches around the area. They conform to some of the standards of a retail center. But this sort of black color scheme that they have going on with the overhang really looks beautiful, and it's going to be especially vulnerable to the white bird droppings that eventually could form on here. If they decide to put tables outside during the pandemic, they're going to have a whole lot of bird activity. Therefore, they're going to want to keep this in really good standing. And there are reasons why this really matters that we're going to talk about coming up here. Why does this investment matter? So we see an old building that was neglected. Eventually, it was probably put up for lease or for sale. But before the business even started in its operation, there was a heavy amount of investment in upgrading that front area. And we have to be really respectful of this in the world of bird control. If this were the back alley and the left photo is just the finished situation of the back alley of the business, that doesn't really matter. There's no real expected perception. When we go down the back alleys behind businesses, there's really no set perception. And companies are starting to learn that there's value in actually branding the backside of their business as well. They draw customers in that way. But this is why the investment matters, is that it has a huge impact on whether or not the business succeeds in that location. In case you don't really understand the world of branding and marketing, I was professionally trained and I spent years working with ad agencies before I was recruited into this world of bird control. And one of the best parts, I think, of my job is understanding how much opportunity there is to appeal to large brands across the whole country with using proper methods that respect the marketing of that company. So a brand logo is everything to their marketing efforts. There's one element of the business, every big Fortune 500, is their marketing and advertising department, and they live and die by all of these things that they build around their brand identity. And the logo is paramount to that. They have to have a really good logo. It's a symbolic representation. Even if it's not directly tied to anything in particular, like this Walmart logo, I didn't even bother researching what it means. All I know is that at a certain point, they rebranded their whole image, and they've done a whole lot of efforts to upgrade the marketing efforts of what they do. The brand strength is the perception that they create, as well as what they follow through is on the promise of the perception. That's the whole idea. You have to have something symbolic that says, hey, come here to this place. You're going to get a consistent, reliable value in the things that we offer you. That's what it's all about. Now, let's take a look at logos themselves. These logos, everyone will recognize them, right? But I want you to think a little deeper. This may seem a little bit off topic, but it's really not. We know that this is the logo for Target, right? This is a very recognizable brand. They have stores all across the country, internationally, right? But why? Why is there this logo anyway? Why does it even matter? Well, here's the story behind the Target logo. What's perfect about this logo is it's the bullseye, right? They go hand in hand. We're right on target with what you want. It's a bullseye. But it also conveys the company's essence and the promise to the consumer. So it embodies something that's far more important than most people realize. How about this next one here? Here's the famous Apple logo. So why did they choose this logo? Why does it even matter? If birds were even to nest on top of that sign. Well, this is a symbol. Symbolizes knowledge. The symbol is one of the oldest and most potent in Western mythology. Apple's use of the logo is extremely powerful. Their name and the corresponding logo, the icon, they go together. You rarely see anything mentioned with Apple without the logo alongside it in any marketing or advertising piece, right? Both of them are talking about the same thing, and is very critical to the marketing people who design their stores and all their product line. Here's another, right? The Nike swoosh. Now this one in particular, if we look at the history, the Greek goddess Nike, deity of victory, right? So they said, well, this is cool, but the wing of the goddess, like no one ever could really figure that out, but it doesn't matter because the logo, even if you know nothing about mythology, it still has the right impact because what they have delivered year after year on the logo itself, we know that what we're going to get in terms of athletes and why they spend a lot of money to promote this logo and all the products that it represents. Let's do a couple more here. Another random one, which has all become very identifiable, Starbucks logo. Basically, Starbucks was named after a nautical character, and they have this logo. An early creative partner dug through and found an archive of this logo. They just knew that they wanted something that symbolizes, and eventually when people learn about what Starbucks was and what they had to offer, now that logo carries through on the promise that if you go into this store, you're going to consistently get the same thing that you get every time at the quality level and service that you expect. The last one here, actually this isn't the last one just yet, but this is an interesting one I want you to really think about. The Shell logo is really critical because, who cares about gas, right? Who really cares about gas? Well, the shell logo looks like a crown. The earlier shape of a mollusk shell, the shape of the shell suggests the rule of the company. They rule oil and gas industry. Well, but still, it's customers that come to the gas station. And we always, we feel that at a place that has this national brand, you'll notice that they also spend a lot of time and energy on shrubbery and all the exterior features, not just the logo. But when you go to one of these stores, they have a higher standard and they're outperforming their competition, and that's what the logo represents. So these things really do matter. And the last logo here's our bird barrier logo, for example. Here's what our logo is all about. So freedom. Birds represent freedom and are beloved by people worldwide, right? Birds belong in the clear blue color of the sky where they present little risk to people. Pest birds often relocate and interact with humans' habitats. That's what our company is all about. We provide a shield, right? So we see the shield in our logo from contact with birds free from harm. The bird in the logo is kept from contacting the brand name. People are provided the freedom from potential harm, and then the birds, in the simplest way, right? So invisible barriers, we keep it away. There's always thought that goes into things carefully because you want to send the right message. So now that we know this, I want you to think about this from the viewpoint of how this impacts your ability to do bird control work and how you can notch yourself up quite a bit above the rest by speaking to even your customers that you understand and you're on the same page as them. Top experts despise most in branding inconsistencies in the brand. If you go from one McDonald's to the next McDonald's and the manager says, well, why is this store not keeping up to this one? It really bothers them, right? Inconsistencies. And then improper use of the brand. Like, well, they decided, the owner of that branch decided to paint his a different color. Well, you can't have different colors because what you're telling the customer is that we're advertising our inconsistencies. Then anything negative that associates to the brand, if the logo represents the brand and there's something negative happening to the logo, that's an attack on their ability to project the highest level of brand image. So that's how this all formulates in. I know it seems kind of high concept sort of thing, but believe me, the more that we're being approached by top people from all over, the brands, like your customers at the highest levels are coming to us directly for their own strategy. Of course, we don't install, so we redirect them back for installation, but they more want to know about the overall strategies. They are loving the products that we have engineered and come up with and innovated with that protect their brand image. Is very, very critical, right? So what they require, this is what they require. If the marketing director were to come out from their headquarters, they would tell the store that the signage is to remain exactly as originally designed. You don't alter it in any way. You don't add additions to it. You don't make changes, modifications, or create any interference on what that logo is attached to, and that's the building itself, right? So we really want to think about that, right? Now, we have birds that cause brand issues. This is where the conflict comes from, especially storefront imagery and signage. The issues are varied, but we look at this sign right here. I'm going to give it a second for those of you who are out there. And if you can, put in one word that you think this business is projecting with the sign being in the state that it's in right now. Type into the chat box a word that might come to mind if you think about what's being communicated through the state of this sign. There's bird residue all over this. We look around and looks like there's weather damage that's occurred. Is there any one word that jumps out at you? because I'm going to give you the word that came to me and is a common problem with older businesses that have been around a while. I don't see anybody type it in any answer, Zach. What would your word be, Zach? What one word? See, now Zach is a marketing communications major. This guy knows his stuff, right? Well, Chris says closed.
That's kind of what I was going for.
Closed.
That's kind of what I was going for. Like, is this
aged is a good, that's a good, right? Aged can be a good thing though, right? Aged, like wine, things with age get better with
wrong
age.
With seeing a sign that's been weathered, but this has bird droppings on it. It's completely different.
And just the overall area. So the word that came to my mind, if we advance, is the word neglect. Yeah. I see a lot of neglect. This business is not closed, by the way. It's operational. It's weird because you see that they spent some money on that sign. That's like a stone relief sort of thing. I mean, it looks pretty nice overall, nice font. It was not just something, well, somebody went down and got a banner and just threw it up there, tried to tell them the name of the business. So this is projecting the word neglect. So when you go in, you might be somewhat neglected. They don't take their business seriously. They're not really going to spend a lot of time with whatever it is. Maybe they don't need to. And that, in terms of their retail space, they don't really care. The neglect is not affecting their business. But they don't realize it actually is. These things do have an impact. Let's look at another one here. Now, I want you to look closely because we see there are birds on top of some kind of signage here. And then we see the sign appears to be food, a burger, right? Sesame seed bun, it looks like. So the thing that goes on with things like this is subconsciously, we don't even realize, but we put these two together and we really don't feel the draw to eat that burger because birds are leaving droppings in the vicinity of the very product that they're trying to entice us with. They got this beautiful photo, real high resolution shot of a hamburger, yet there are bird droppings. So subconsciously, we can be impacted and not even realize it. Here's another similar one where it's just simple, where you're selling food, you've got birds all over the property, and then there is an association to the messaging. Either way, with or without the birds, there's messaging going on. There's communication. We see the neon inside these channel letters, a throwback to when neon was popular, 50s diner sort of hamburger joint, right? But with the birds, it means something else. Whether you consciously pick up on it or not, it's negative. This is negative association. Any marketing director will have a big problem with this. Oftentimes, your customer that you're dealing with got, some kind of notice from the people who are running the whole show, right? They're the ones in charge of the brand protection, and they say, hey, you got to do something about those birds out on the sign. And that's the first time the store manager may even consider dealing with it. And then, just in general, from studies that were done, pigeons and their droppings are very heavily associated with urban decay and, most importantly, apathy. The fact that they just don't care. Nobody cares, right? We don't care. There's birds. Who cares? By the way, if you're dealing with companies that don't care about the birds, don't think that you can go in and convince them that the birds matter. That's not a bird opportunity. If you show up to a company and they say, man, we've got these birds, we want to get rid of them, that's not apathy. They just don't have the knowledge to know how to do it. So it's really important. But just in general, across the board, pigeons and their droppings in consistent reproduction and constantly on a property is a sign of apathy, that the customer just doesn't care. They don't care about their business nearly as much. They don't care about their customers nearly as much as someone who takes care of all the details. Very detail oriented. So that's really critical. And remember what we're talking about. We're talking about the perceptions that go with this. Now, there's a marketing fact that from the research I did, and this comes from the sign industry, that 1 in 3 people believe the exterior state of quality absolutely represents the level of the quality of the product or service offered by that business. So if we go back to this previous photo, 1 in 3 people think that there's apathy, there's neglect. If I go into that business, they're probably not going to care as much as I really want them to. And that's very bad for business, okay? That's the point of this. And remember, in Introduction to Bird Control, if you take the other modules, if you were with us earlier today, what's the number one reason for why people will pay for bird control? It was image. Number 2 was cost of cleanup to make the image look better. So most of this is all tied in, far more than most people realize. In pest control, we tend to think it's all about health, right? But it's not. So here's a clean building, right? Nice and fresh. The goal of the company is to make it look this way, at least for 10, 20 years, until trends eventually change, and maybe dark brown against a cream sort of mixture with the stone doesn't make sense. Maybe light blue along with mint green becomes a trend. Maybe the brand people have identified that they'll do better and they'll change the colors, but the structure, while it is in its original design form, needs to stay just like this. It needs to stay intact. Here's an example of what eventually happens just from the passage of time. But think of how hard-pressed this business would be where they're advertising beauty, right? They're advertising beauty. The sign says beauty, but anyone who's interested in anything that had to do with beauty would probably be really opposed to going into a store that's in this condition. Now, obviously, this one closed down, but eventually it could have been because of all of this neglect and lack of care of the exteriors. This stuff is really starting to come in prominence now. And we see an example here of a store, a Marshall's, very famous brand, and we see birds, and they've been there for a while, and they seem to be pretty fixated. They're not nesting from what I can tell, but probably on this prop they're nesting. Now you think about that, you're gonna, you or your wife or your kids are gonna go into the store as opposed to the next one. Let's look at the next picture. The next picture shows the way the stores generally roll out when they're brand new. We don't realize, but just by this image right here, it doesn't matter what's going on inside the store. 1 in 3 for sure will think that this is a much better store than the previous one. And the only difference is the exterior imagery and the wear and tear of time. Just birds alone have a real negative effect on storefront, on retail locations. So let's talk about solutions. How do we properly deal with signs and then maintain the brand image? Well, there are a few pointers I want to talk about first. In Introduction to Bird Control, we told you about the problems of not using spikes for high pressure areas, but also spikes are very much in contradiction to some of the rules of branding and marketing. Okay, what many professionals in pest control don't realize is that they contradict the message that I talked about earlier, and that is that retail storefronts and signage to remain exactly as originally designed. No alterations, additions, changes, modifications, or interference. So here we see modifications with the spikes. This is a change to the signage, not approved by the headquarters. Okay? Interference, like the spikes themselves are interfering and they're adding something to the logo that changes its meaning. And these are things that matter even on a subconscious level, because the idea of keeping your car in working order and keeping your car well maintained is about being very conscientious and being attention to detail. So we see even bird spikes like this really affect things. Now, it doesn't always translate to the branch managers or the people running the individual stores, So it's always good to kind of, work in the favor and tell them that, hey, look, your store is going to look a lot better as it was originally intended. But even adding spikes that just are completely on the structure of signage is a contradiction. It's an alteration that really shouldn't be done. Here we see, the residue of bird droppings were still even in and around these spikes, and it just doesn't send the kind of message that should be the key message. We somehow have to keep these things in good order. Additional research. Consulting firms were hired in 2017 for some of the most major brands, big box retailers across the country. They were studied very carefully, and they concluded that spikes send the wrong message on storefronts. They want to have the stores use methods that maintain their brand. They say, okay, refresh the storefronts to their original design. And then as far as the bird control itself, right, they still have to keep it in good order from birds. Now, here's another interesting fact that came from the research. When a neglected retail business location restores its storefront to the original design, it put new paint, signage all back to its original shape, repair any broken windows, keep the entrance maintained and clean, power wash the ground, that store can expect an annual sales revenue increase of 5%. 5% if they do this, keep this place nice and clean, repair, get the signs back to where they were, paint all the exterior, clean the stones, keep everything in good working order. Here's the example, a $2 million business, right? There are a lot of little corner restaurants that do over $2 million a year. This is $100,000 in increased sales revenue. $5 million business, $250,000, and then a $20 million business. If they really focus on their refreshing of that retail experience, they can increase their sales by $1 million. These are big numbers that you should memorize and have in the back of your mind to tell the customer that, when you're there, that not only are you going to do really good bird control work, you're going to solve this proper way. These are opportunities where I see guys that take it a step further and they'll do touch up of paint. They'll fix things while they're up on the lifts and ladders. They go the extra step even beyond the bird work, and they get really happy customers and great results for what they're trying to do. The perception is really huge on the storefronts. So here, let's look at some examples of how birds affect signage. The first thing I wanted to show you, again, is just how these architects are constantly designing birds habitat into the design. Let's look at a closer look at this Forever 21 and just look at all of those ledges there, right? It's just inviting birds to go in there and get up on the sign, the F21 logo. Birds eventually are going to be droppings all over this. Now, they don't care. The architects, if they know in advance it's going to create a problem, they have spent too much time figuring out that this is the look they want to go with. The only question is, how do we solve birds and maintain this look without altering it? Here we see a classic problem. These are sparrows. Not only are they nesting in the signs, they're nesting behind the signs, right? They bring all that straw and debris behind the letters and create a big mess. This is sending the wrong message on a very nice storefront. Here we see sometimes it's not just the signage, but really what's going on above it. We have parapet ledges, and then all these droppings are falling down. They're equally as damaging. So what we want to do is protect that upper ledge as well as the signage, not just the signage itself. Here again, cavity dwellers that get inside the openings of the channel letters, as well as the support systems that hold all of this lettering up. And again, we saw this earlier, but sometimes the signage itself is intact, but it's becoming under attack all around it with the droppings falling down, and you have to take care of all the ledges above the signage, not just the signage itself. So now we can talk about some proper solutions, and then we'll take any questions about this. Now, we're going to talk about deterrents that are all part of our standard training. So if you don't know the details of these products, just remember we have training like this first one tomorrow. Stealth Net can be used for signage, and we're doing a special module that's part of the full certification tomorrow at 8 a.m. Pacific time, along with how to price bird jobs, and then also selling bird jobs after that. Those are the 4, 5, and 6 modules of certification. But StealthNet is called StealthNet for a reason. It's branded. Stealth means hard to detect, right? We can't detect it. So ultimately what they're doing here is on an area where there was a lot of bird problem, they clean everything, and this decision was to net off the whole facing, leaving the signage somewhat intact and barely even obscured. Now, it's rare anymore that we see people putting netting on signage, but the point of this is there are times where permanent signage can be solved with permanent netting that goes up for years at a time. We think that it's visible, but look at this photo, and on the right side there you see the cable is mounted into the stucco surface. The net is stretched over. Most people can't even see this, and this is black Stealth Net, by the way. Black Stealth Net is the most invisible. Even though, you know, there are stone color like we saw in the previous one, there are ways to net off the whole facing that are still possible, and still this is done all the time in different areas. Here's a better example, I think, where Stealth Net would work, even though this one hadn't been treated. You've got the signage itself, but you've got these open cavities where the birds have already started nesting behind there. We could spend a lot of time and energy going in there and cleaning out that entire cavity to the point where then maybe we could put in optical gel, or we could put in shock track, and it certainly would be effective. But when it comes to situations, you generally want to go for the least expensive solution. That's what the customer wants, as long as it doesn't affect things. And we could certainly net off that entire facing and get great results, because that is a whole cavity where birds are. And that's where I like to see Stealth Net used in signage more, when it's something like this application. Now, for a long time, this was the go-to. The go-to product was Flex Track for signage. And the reason why is it follows what we said earlier. From the ground looking up, it doesn't cause any major alteration, interference, and it's doing all this work very low profile. The shock keeps the birds off and out of the cavities, and from the ground it looks as good as it was when it was originally designed, keeping all the birds and the negative association from it. So you have to just attach it, and again, we have shock track training that we have. If you go to our YouTube channel, you will see, we've got all of our products, how to install them. Those are available. There's a special one on Flex Track, Bird Shock Flex Track. You can watch the install video. Just about anybody can do the install. There's a little bit of trick to doing the wiring part of it. We always use solar chargers to power this sort of system, so you don't need an electrical permit to do anything. This is all done without permits. It's all approved because it's bird deterrent system. We see the wires jump across and the whole thing is electrified. I have a couple more I can show you here up close. You get the idea. You know, this is going to be a permanent fixture as well as above, right? If we're going to put shock track on the sign, we're always going to go above the sign on the parapet ledge, and because we've got power up there, we can just run some extra lines off. It comes in different colors to match, especially if the signage itself is a certain color, to make it blend in even more, which is following what the brand managers want to see happen. But the real change in the world of the sign industry, we went to one of their big expos, actually a couple of them, and they absolutely fell in love with this product because it's so easy to install and it solves the same thing we just saw with Flex Track, that it can be installed on the signage, and from below you really just don't see what's going on. You know, here we see before there was this raven that was nesting up in the signage and it had taken over, and the droppings on the ground were horrible. Cleaned it all off, and this sign below, we kind of come down a little bit of a lower angle so you can still see where the discs are. You can see how much cleaner it is, and years later we go and we see the sign and it looks very good. It's easy to install on signage. You have to space it properly, clean everything, but ultimately, as we see here, here's a place where bird spikes were used and were failing. Birds were nesting in on the spikes, and so the spikes were taken down, optical gel was put in, and there it is from below. You can't even see it, a thing.
Really quick, I just want to show that the spikes are on the goods, the G and the other thing, but the 5 has optical gel, and you can just see the difference immediately.
And of course, after that, the rest of it was treated. You're going to see a video coming up here now that shows the install of this particular sign project. I'll go ahead and kind of narrate along with this as well, but this is how to install this one. So look at the nest. You know, this is all have spikes in it, and then all of the spikes were taken down. So we go in, we remove the spikes. Whenever we have failed spikes, of course you see he's wearing the proper PPE. It's very critical that you don't breathe any of this dust and debris coming off of there. You have to get all the spikes out of there, remove all the debris. All this is covered with bird pheromone that's going to attract them back. So what we use is a very specific cleaning solution that's going to take away any draw for the bird to come back. The bird's still going to want to try to reclaim this for its nesting, but if we can't remove the spikes without damaging, of course we want to just clip those off. It's not going to be visible from below. So after we get this dissolvent treatment, we've cleaned off all the droppings, and we give it a nice sanitation using bleach water. Diluted bleach water is great. It allows you to then go in and safely install the disc. There's spacing guides. Again, we have specific training just on this product, but on the box will be a spacing guide. You want to keep them nice and close together where there was nesting, at least 6 inch center to center. And then you remove the lids, and that activates the disc. It's ready to go. On the top, where there's not overhead protection, you can space them out a little bit further. But there we go. Any of the horizontal surface where the birds were placing their feet, and there you go from below. No birds, no nest, no spikes. This is the way that branding people want to see signs. That's the point of this, is that don't disregard the branding. Be a person that speaks on behalf of the corporate headquarters. Let your customer know that you're on the same page. You could use spikes and different things around at different areas, but when it comes to retail, customer-facing areas, you want to use the right product that is low profile, profitable by being easy to use. Optical gel is great for that. Or, you know, the shock track and even netting is part of the whole plan. Now, sometimes we have combination of those, right? Sometimes we have special situations. Here's a situation where mud swallows were on a sign, and even though you know, it's not really directly on the actual sign, it's the structure itself. By putting optical gel here, it was the least expensive way to solve the problem. And even though we can see those pucks from below, this sign is a freeway sign. This is intended to be used to where people on the freeway going 70 miles an hour are going to look over and say, oh, there's a Burger King, there's an Arco, there's an AMPM. They also have diesel. I'm getting off. That's a different kind of sign, and it has a little more flexibility. But ultimately, all those droppings are falling on cars and below, and that was creating a bad image for the business. Sometimes we use combination of other things with it, right? That's around the peripheral areas, not the sign itself, but the support system, maybe the building itself. You've kept the sign clean, but birds are nesting in other areas. We want to be equally low profile. You see optical gel used on top of some of the devices. The eaves in the back corners were netted off, and then bird wire was used on certain areas. So sometimes it's a combination of things that can be used, and we offer all of these things from Bird Barrier to certified installers. Sometimes birds get behind signs, so we use a PVC coated mesh material that we see the corrugated sort of material that has to be, you know, excluded. So I have a sample piece of that material here. This is very important. So if you have gaps behind the signs, you can use this product and cut it in different sections to screen out the birds. This is the same thing that's used for solar panels as well. When you send us photos, we can tell you based on what we see. But if there are gaps behind the sign, we can use optical gel in the sign, but we want to seal off the edges as well. We can't just put optical gel behind. What we have to do is seal it off using the PVC mesh. Any questions that you have now about signage and bird control, we're able to take your questions. You just type in to the chat box any of your questions.
People can also, it's unmuted if people want to talk.
Yeah, we've unmuted everyone here too. So if you have something you want to say or have a situation where you have a question, please, by all means, let us know. But ultimately, you know, that's the overview. I just want to make sure people understood how important it is from the corporate headquarters that signage is treated properly and done in a way where you know, you really solve the bird problem, but you're also protecting the signage in the proper way. You can call us at 800-NO-BIRDS or go to our website, and at the top there is my email. We also have Ray, who is our East Coast rep. Tony Jaton is taking people from all over and quoting all of your big projects, and then our president, Cameron Riddell. But if you've got any kind of project that you want help with, you can email me directly. Let's put my email up again there, Zach, and send me photos of the situation. Give me the address, get photos up close of the droppings and up above where they're nesting, and I'll be glad to help you strategize and come up with a solution for it. If you've got a project you think that you want to use optical gel with, you could qualify for a free starter kit worth about $100. And if it looks like it's going to be a good project to use optical gel on, we'll give it to you so that you can install it and show the customer how effective it is for the solution. That's it for now. I think we've covered everything. Zach, do you have anything else for the group out there?
Just thank you guys for joining us today. I know that went kind of long. Tomorrow we have our next 3 modules, which are StealthNet, estimating, and selling. Those will be basically the same time frame. We'll get you out before 11 a.m. Pacific time before then tomorrow, and then you guys are fully certified.
Okay, that's it. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you at the next webcast. Take care. What'd you think?
Yeah.